Today we're going to be talking about sharpening. This topic's pretty important for people who work with hand tools, and sometimes the most effective way to do that is with a jig, especially when you're learning. In this case, we're going to be talking about the Mark II honing guide. So the parts that you're going to want to concern yourself with are the clamp bar and the blade clamp knob. These are designed to hold the blade into position. On the other side here, you have the wheel assembly. Here is the micro bevel knob, which is going to allow you to apply your micro bevel. And the final knob is the blade carrier locking knob, which allows you to move between different sets of angles while using the jig. The other part of the honing guide is the registration jig. The registration jig is simply designed to allow you to put a blade in squarely and to ensure that you have the appropriate projection of that blade for honing. The way it's achieved is with this small fence on the back side of the registration jig and a stop that is adjustable by reading the front numbers on the registration jig and setting the stop to the appropriate position. Attaching the two is quite simple. You attach this by sliding it on the sliding dovetail here on the front, and you'll notice that there are a set of numbers inscribed on the jig. This is just an indication of what the approximate width of the blade is, and you set it to that spot and gently tighten the registration clamp knob. So the blade we're going to be working with today is out of a block plane. Now block planes generally have an edge that goes straight across the edge as opposed to a smoother blade which is slightly cambered. All that's left is putting the blade in. Simply turn the jig upside down and place the blade in the bevel up position, ensuring that it is perfectly registered on the fence and up against the stop. And then what I do is I alternately tighten each set of knobs so that I get equal clamping pressure. This is extremely important because if you don't do this, you could end up with the blade skewing in the jig, which is going to affect the results that you get. You're also going to want to make sure that the micro bevel knob is in the 12 o'clock position when preparing to do the primary bevel. Once the blade is in position, simply loosen the registration jig clamp knob and slide it out of the way, and you're ready to hone. Today we're working with a piece of glass with sandpaper adhered to it as our abrasive medium, but you can use whatever you have in your shop or that you generally sharpen with. What's important is that this jig gets held correctly against that particular abrasive so that you get the grind that you're looking for. So in order to hold the jig properly, what you want to do is put your fingers down on the jig and support the blade on either side by putting equal downward pressure on the blade. If not, you could end up with a cambered blade. All that's left is moving the jig back and forth in order to begin honing. Once we're done the primary bevel, we're going to move the micro bevel knob to the 6 o'clock position in order to help us hone the secondary bevel. Also, I'm going to switch to a finer grit paper so that I get a nice glass-like edge on this blade. So the last step of the honing is going to be to remove the blade and remove the burr that you just generated from working on the bevel. To do this, all you're going to do is flip it over onto the back side, and a few strokes should be enough on the finest grit to remove that burr. The way I check the blade for sharp is to put it on the edge of my fingernail, and if it readily catches the fingernail, then you know that it is quite sharp. So now that you have a keenly honed blade, all that's left is put it back into the tool and get back to what you really enjoy doing, which is woodworking.